Week 2 now completely in the books. A gruesome injury for Nick Chubb in the Steelers-Browns Monday Nighter, Saints-Panthers as well on the doubleheader on Monday night. And Patrick Mahomes has a new contract. All that more on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Shout out to all the everydayers. Make sure you are one. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I mean, football takes a back seat after what we saw on Monday Night Football, Matt. And I know you're really plugged into that Steelers-Browns game, and it's the thing you hate to see the most. Not just an injury, not just a season ender, but one with the way it looked, and we don't have MRI results yet, but Nick Chubb, this could be a career-altering, if not even career-ending injury with how that looked, and I kind of wish I didn't see that slow-motion replay.
Yeah, me too. I mean, really, really unfortunate. I will give the hometown crowd here some credit. They were cheering his name on the way out. I mean, that's not usually a rivalry thing to do, but way more importantly, I mean, he started his career basically better than any back of this era. I mean, right there with Henry and McCaffrey and all those guys, but he's been durable. He's been basically the best ball carrier since he arrived and is on, I know this sounds crazy, but I did so much Browns work. He's on lists with like Barry Sanders and Jamal Charles and Jim Brown, yards per carry, efficiency numbers. And you hope, I mean, I'm sure he's done for the year, but you hope he can come back and be close to what he was. And it just shows how brutal the game is and how brutal that position is.
And word from the Browns, Kevin Stefanski after the game, it's a significant injury. He's going to be done for the year. And we'll know more about it later on, probably Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, find out MRI results, the exactness of what that injury is and what exactly is torn or broken in there. But the good news, I guess, if there is any, he did go to the hospital and, you know, they're checking on arteries and these other things as well. They could be even bigger problems, bigger injuries. And it looks like he was okay to travel with the team back home to Cleveland. And so, you know, I guess that is good news there. And he's already dealt with a really massive knee injury from college. I mean, he was so awesome early in his college career at Georgia. And I think he fell a little bit in the draft because he had that ACL. And I think that was like ACL, MCL. It was a pretty big injury, you know, and it's the life of a running back. And I understand why running backs want to be paid more. And it's almost like, and look, if we're talking injuries, he's not alone in week 2 of the NFL season. It's early in the season. There's teams scrambling at running back already. Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley went down with a sprained ankle. Luckily, not a high ankle sprain, but he's going to be gone for 3 weeks. And they've got a Thursday nighter up quick. And so that's a tough one for New York. They lose their best player and they're on the road on a Thursday night. You've got Austin Eckler's been injured. Jonathan Taylor, whatever his situation is right now. You've got Dobbins and you've got Jones and
Aaron Jones rest of the week. Yeah,
Aaron Jones out.
Wow.
You know, some of those are season enders, Dobbins and Chubb, and some others. The players will be back at some point. Taylor, I would assume, would be back, and potentially there's still trade opportunities there. And with all these teams with running back injuries, maybe there's more teams willing to trade for Taylor now that weren't willing to 2 weeks ago before the season started. And even some other, I mean, if we're looking at it from a fantasy perspective, there's tons of weird running back situations anyways, where, you know, fantasy owners are probably really scrambling right now to try to find someone to plug into their lineup. Because even, I mean, the league's leading rusher last year, Josh Jacobs, had -2 yards this week.
2 yards. Yeah. and Breece Hall's not all the way back, and
Right.
the Vikings are doing nothing on the ground, and a couple things you thought you could count on just aren't there at all, especially at that position. You laid it out well. I mean, not only could Taylor's market get a little spike, but I mean, could the Browns call Kareem Hunt back? Or you would think Fournette gets a call soon. I mean, a couple of those guys that have been looming out there, maybe they get jobs quick.
The attrition at running back, it was kind of a really smooth year last year with Jacobs and Barkley and McCaffrey and Derrick Henry and Chubb. And all these guys had a really smooth season as far as injuries. And there were some really good rushing performances last year and rushing totals. And those injuries are already stacking up this year in the NFL at that position. So that's unfortunate. You hate that. And you really just, the thoughts are out there for Nick Chubb, and you hope this is something he can come back from, because that looked really bad and it kind of mars the entire football game.
It did. And it was not the prettiest games to begin with. I mean, Coach Tomlin called it AFC North football. I mean, all division games are tough. Doesn't matter what division it is, but this wasn't particularly pretty. I'm sure we'll talk about the quarterbacks. Jerome Ford came in and played well, and I think he's an underrated player. I'm not saying he's a Nick Chubb 1-for-1 replacement, but as handcuffs go, I think you could do a little worse than that.
I mean, he did have the 69-yard run. Those were 69 of his 106 yards there. So that was a huge play. Watson even throwing a block on that one. We are going to talk to the quarterbacks in the next segment, I think, because that's a different conversation here with at least the two quarterbacks in this game, and maybe even talking about some of the quarterbacks in the other Panthers and Saints game as well that we've got to cover. But the Jerome Ford, is the replacement for the Browns. He's not going to be Nick Chubb.
No.
And when you look at the Browns now, and we're going to talk about Watson in more detail, but he did not look great. You had both starting cornerbacks left the game with injuries at one point, right? You had Denzel Ward left the field. You had Newsome that was banged up in that game.
I think Newsome's might be bad. I haven't heard yet today, but just post game didn't sound great.
We're still kind of pre-MRI right now as we record this on Tuesday morning, so we don't know the details of all these. But suddenly you look at the Cleveland Browns, and that's a team that you feel like you really have to fade.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, especially because the way Watson's playing, they lost their right tackle before this game, Conklin. The defense looks great, and maybe that's just because my Steeler offense is horrible and the Bengals offense was horrible in week 1, but that is a bit of a trend. I mean, the defense looks phenomenal. Hopefully corner injuries don't derail that. But I have two crazy stats from that game that you just don't see. I mean, if you look at the turnover differential, it was 4-2 favoring the Steelers. Steelers only turned the ball over twice. The Browns turned it over 4 times. Fine. But the Browns were also 0-for-2 on 4th down, and they missed a field goal. And I've, since this podcast was started, I've told people missing a field goal and missing a 4th down conversion is no different than fumbling the play before. So really, they turned the ball over 7 times compared to the Steelers when you look at it in depth. And listen to this. I just tweeted this out. As we know, 2 of those turnovers turned into Steeler defensive scores by Highsmith and Watt. The Steelers scored 26 points in this game and never once snapped the ball inside the Browns' 30-yard line. Not even the red zone, the 30.
That is an amazing stat, and it really sort of puts into perspective exactly what you saw. If you watched the game, you felt like, what was that win? How did the Steelers even pull that off? Not a single snap inside the 30.
Not a single snap inside the 30.
0 red zone snaps. Yeah. That is unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
I wonder when the last time a team won a football game with 0 red zone snaps.
I don't know. I mean, it's probably happened, returns for touchdowns, of course, or bad weather game, things like that. But not only that, not even inside the 30. Ugh. That's
pretty amazing.
That's kind of what it sums up the game, though. I mean, it sums
up the game, and it sums up the quarterback play on both sides. I want to talk a little bit more about Watson and Kenny Pickett. Underwhelming performances on Monday Night Football. Was that because of the defenses, or was that because of them? Because we're seeing a trend now with both of these quarterbacks for multiple games. Speaking of quarterbacks, Mahomes got a new contract. The details there, and the other Monday Nighter, Saints Panthers as well, coming up next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Jace Medical. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected, during an emergency. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace case. The Jace case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind so that you're not just hoping that you have access to medication you might need in an emergency. Jace Medical, make sure you have the medication in hand. Jace Medical is super simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. So whatever your personal needs are for your family, or just generally you need to be ready for an emergency situation, a traveling situation where you might not have service or cell phone service and you could be stuck somewhere in the unexpected in an emergency. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's Jace Medical, Jase medical.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, and there's no better time than to get involved at FanDuel right now and snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose on that first $5 bet. And that's $200 extra dollars to bet on spreads, player props, over-unders in the NFL, parlays. There, you build your own parlay. The app is super easy and safe to use. I love the website, the interface. You can find any of the bets, the amazing volume of bets that you can find at FanDuel on the NFL and any sport as well. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on that action than right now early in the NFL season. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Okay, before we move over to the Panthers-Saints game, Matt, and these are kind of a couple of, ugly. Some people might have called them snoozer games on Monday Night Football. You laid out some of it very well about what that looked like for the Steelers offense. And look, those are two pretty good defenses. Like TJ Watt's a special player. I can't believe he's already at 28 years old, is the career leader in sacks for a Pittsburgh Steelers defense that has monumental defenses in the past.
Hall of Famers everywhere. Right.
Right.
He's #1. Yeah.
Pretty unbelievable. But some of that was bad quarterback play on top of good defensive play, I think. I think it was a combination of both of those things. First with Watson. This is years now, plural, of bad play from Deshaun Watson. Is this just a new normal for Watson? Forget what we saw earlier on in his career in Houston, because he's just not that guy anymore.
I'm officially worried. I mean, I think you could give last year a pass, that he went 700 days between games. I mean, that's insane. And to take it even further, unlike some of these injured guys or whatever, he wasn't even in the quarterback meeting room. He wasn't allowed in the building, and then boom, you're here, throw you right in. And some of the Watson apologists or fantasy folks, rightfully so, will look at his games last year and be like, weather was unbelievably bad. They played some of the toughest defenses in the league. Okay, I can explain those things away. And hey, the Bengals and Steelers defense this year aren't bad either. That's for sure. I mean, they're both probably upper tier, better than the league average. But he doesn't look good. I mean, he's always held the ball a long time. He doesn't play with any rhythm. His accuracy is really poor. You know how NFL.com does that next-gen stat of the game for their game roundups? Well, under pressure this year, he's completed 7 out of 22 passes. I mean, his completion percentage over expected while under pressure is the worst in the league. And making matters worse, I don't know if people know this, but the Browns offense is the most expensive in the league. But it's not this year in 2023. But it's not because of Watson. They restructured. He's only an $18 million cap hit this year. So that O-line, Cooper, Njoku, Chubb, those guys are eating up tons of cap space. Well, next year and the 2 years after, Watson is a $62 million cap hit. I was asked on the Steeler pregame show, like, people around here don't pay attention to it. And they're like, well, what's Watson need to do for this trade to be worth it for the Browns? I'm like, he basically has to be Josh Allen or better, let alone not be awful. If he's awful, it's one of the worst trades in history.
Oh my God, he's going to be top 5 quarterback in the NFL for it to look
to
good,
make it count. Yeah,
at the minimum. So it's not looking great for the Browns there. Watson's going to have to turn it around. He has time. He's a talented player.
Sure.
But one of the things I'm seeing in the NFL this year, and we kind of started to see it last year too, is because the NFL is really cyclical, and everyone's kind of chasing everybody else's tail a little bit with how the league is played, who's good, who's not. We went from an era of, oh man, you got to have the cerebral, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, get the ball out, timing, passing games, everything's, that sort of a quarterback. And then all of a sudden the Mahomes and the Josh Allens show up and like, oh my God, we need physical gifts. Lamar Jackson, we can run the ball with our quarterback. We can make big plays. It's all about just the physical tools. And you saw these big armed, really high-end traits quarterbacks hitting big. And so the league started drafting high-end quarterbacks. And then now all of a sudden we're seeing, the guys that hold the ball a long time and are playing hero ball, trying to get the ball downfield. And Russell Wilson was so good at it for a long time. And Watson, that's kind of his thing. We're seeing Fields, it's a disaster. Trey Lance couldn't get off the ground.
Purdy versus Lance is perfect.
Purdy, right. And we're seeing now Mahomes is really changed the way he plays. And Josh Allen throws 3 interceptions trying to make the big throw. He's got to take the underneath stuff. And so it's kind of skewing back again now away from those players back to the cerebral, get the ball out quick, timing. And I think a lot of it has to do with all the the offenses around the league kind of there's a quarter of the league is from that Shanahan McVay tree, and that's a timing based offense. So maybe that's part of it as well. But it's wild how that works. And you would think that Kenny Pickett would fit right in with that group, but he has not looked like that so far this year.
That's a tremendous, thought by you of just in 1 year what has changed with quarterbacking. Burrow and Mahomes last year, if they saw cover 2, they checked it down. They adapted their game. They were big game hunters, and then they decided, I'll death by 1,000 paper cut you in a Brady-like manner. And your Niners are a perfect example. And as you were saying that, the perfect example, actually, Tua Tagovailoa has the least rushing EPA of any quarterback in the league this year. He has the least value as any rusher at the quarterback position, and he's torturing the league. You know what I mean? Yeah. Perfect example. Kenny, I could go on and on about. I mean, I have a lot of problems with the offensive design. I just mentioned EPA. Right now, the Steelers' offense is 32nd in offensive EPA. They're 30th in rushing EPA. The Vikings and Raiders are the only ones worse, and they're last in passing EPA. That being said, you probably saw this against the Niners. That game wasn't competitive, but there were a lot of open receivers, and he was just flat out awful. I mean, I didn't blame Matt Canada. Everyone here wants to kill the coordinator, of course. Kenny looked really, really bad in that game, and this one was slightly better, but not much. And there's some telling stats that when he plays within structure, when the ball comes out of his hands in 2.5 seconds or less, he's really, really good. But people think of him as this game manager. He's much more of a wild stallion at heart than he is Mac Jones. You know what I mean? He wants to extend plays. At Pitt, he had a really high expected their time to throw. And it's been bad when it's here. When it's over 2.5, sure, he makes people miss and he makes some big plays, but really things go right down the toilet. And his accuracy is what blows me away. I mean, he's always been highly, highly accurate. Not this year.
If he's not going to be accurate and he's not going to see things clearly, it's going to be a tough road for Kenny Pickett. And maybe we have to wait. This place that played the Niners and Browns, and those are 2 pretty good defenses. So I don't know who's next on the Steelers schedule, but maybe we'll wait another couple weeks and see what he looks like against some other defenses. But early returns this year, not good for a player we expected to take a big jump this season.
Raiders and Texans up next. So put up or shut up. It better get better.
We'll know after week 4 then.
Exactly. That's what I keep telling people. The first 2 were awful, and if we're having this conversation 2 weeks from now, then the sky can fall, and I can understand it.
Hey, if George Pickens is going to make runs after the catch like he did on the 71-yard touchdown and not be the jump ball guy, that's a good sign. You might have yourself a true number one receiver there in George Pickens.
You stole the words out of my mouth. I recorded a local podcast here right before we hit record, and I thought one of the most promising things with that game with Deontay Johnson out was Pickens flashed true number one stuff, not just highlight stuff. He had a remarkably high yards per route run. Kenny missed him several times. His day could have been much, much better. So he did the little things that he didn't do as a rookie.
All right, speaking of pretty mediocre quarterback play, let's talk Saints, Panthers next, and the new mega contract restructure for Patrick Mahomes. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is some of the most fun you will have playing daily fantasy sports this NFL season. And while you're having all that fun, you can win up to 25 times your money this football season. You can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps at Prize Picks. And it's super fun to play. All you do is you pick two or more players and you choose more or less than their projected stats in any given game. Yesterday, I recommended that on the Monday nighter, you take the more than 9.5 rushing yards for Bryce Young. And all he had to do was hit that one scramble, right? And you got it. And that was a direct hit. So hopefully you use my projections here. I think I hit a couple of really good ones on Sunday. I remember Ingram's over 39.5 receiving yards was an easy one for me. And you can find those at Prize Picks. You can find daily and weekly specials and promotions as well, like Taco Tuesday. And it's not just NFL projections at Prize Picks. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. It's a good week on Prize Picks. It was a bad week for some young, inexperienced quarterbacks around the NFL. Bryce Young, you're getting indoctrinated into the league, and I think even more so than Bryce Young, the real stark thing I saw in that game was the lack of any kind of separation any of his receivers are getting.
Oh, it's bad.
Number one target, 9 targets, 7 catches for 54 yards, and the touchdown for Adam Thielen. And Adam Thielen, at least you have a veteran. And I understand why they bring in someone like Adam Thielen. You need that for a young quarterback. He knows offenses. He's been in multiple schemes. He's going to be in the right spot, but he's not the guy that's going to get open and create big plays for you. He's going to catch the ball and get tackled. He's not going to create a lot of separation, but he's going to be smart and be a starting player and be the veteran in the room. You have Jonathan Mingo, who's a gadget player who you have to manufacture touches for. DJ Chark's kind of that one-trick pony guy, not a separator laterally, but can get down the field a little bit. So it's already tough for a young quarterback in the NFL, and there's not going to be a lot of separation for him to make those throws as a rookie.
No, it's really well said. I mean, there was a lot of excitement in the building. Carolina doesn't host a lot of primetime games, home opener, first overall pick. But my impressions of this game, and I didn't study it, obviously, like the Steeler game, and I was doing pregame shows as well, was the number one thing is Carr has legit weapons. I mean, Michael Thomas, I don't say he's back, but he's a good football player now. I love Shaheed. Olave's a 1. Carolina would kill for any of those guys at this point. You know what I mean? And I just thought both teams pressured the quarterback well, but the Saints were just a little better at everything. Carr was a little better than Young at this game. They ran the ball a little better than Carolina in this game. Defense was a little stouter. They're 2-0. The Panthers are 0-2,
And it's funny because the stat line doesn't really tell the whole story except for one thing, and that's the yards per throw for Bryce Young was only 4.6 yards. That's very dink and dunk on, especially, 33 pass attempts to have only 153 yards. But he had the touchdown, no interceptions. He has an 87.1 rating, a 60.7 QBR. That looks good compared to Derek Carr, who was 21 of 36 for 228, no touchdown passes. He had the 1 interception, but watching the game, it didn't feel like Bryce Young had a better game than Derek Carr. But it didn't feel like any of them were lighting it up.
Right. Yeah, he was more efficient, but he wasn't more effective.
So the 0-2 Carolina Panthers, I think we knew it was going to be a long season for them as they brought in a new regime, new quarterback. For the New Orleans Saints now, this is getting pretty fun in the NFC South with some teams that are stacking up some wins. The Saints now 2-0, and I think you feel pretty good about their chances of being in that division in the end. We'll see how the records stack up if they can try to sneak even multiple teams into the playoffs from that division.
Yeah, and I think it's very possible, and a lot of it is strength of schedule. We talked about that a lot coming up, but I mean, I just pulled up the Saints. I mean, they go to Green Bay. They easily could lose that one. Then they got Tampa, the Patriots, the Texans. I mean, they look like a 4-2 type of team, maybe 5-1. And Atlanta and Tampa might be in that same conversation. So
those
interesting, fun division. But the division games are going to be monster. You're right.
You got one this week, and I think that's what's going to decide it there in the South is those division games. So it's going to be fun with Tampa and the Saints. And then you look at the NFC picture. And I think the NFC is not really super surprising for us right now. There was 3 teams that were head and shoulders above everybody coming into the year. It was 49ers, Eagles, and Cowboys. And I think that gap might have even gotten bigger between those 3 teams and everybody else in the NFC. And then it's just a shotgun start. So there's really nobody out of it in the NFC. Maybe the Cardinals, Bears, Panthers are going to have a tough go, I think, to turn things around and get into the playoff picture. But just about everybody else has an opportunity to try to fight for one of those last 4 playoff spots in the NFC.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it's interesting. The AFC is looked at as the powerhouse, but there's only 2-0 teams in the AFC, where the NFC, if I was doing power ranks right now, I think I'd put Dallas 1. I'd probably put the Niners 2, and the Eagles might be 4th or 5th. I mean, maybe even 3rd. So do they have 3 of the top 4 teams in the league? Possibly.
Right. It's the Chiefs, kind of a slow start.
Right. Buffalo,
them above any of those 3 teams. I wouldn't fight you for it, but I think right now they might be 4 or something like that. 3 at 1-1. The Bills also at 1-1. Who else is in the Dolphins? Like the Dolphins would probably be the one. They've looked the best so far of all the AFC teams that way, but it's only been 2 weeks.
And Baltimore's 2-0, but I don't look at them as a top 5 powerhouse at the moment. And Cincy can't be in that conversation at the moment. And the Jets aren't, obviously. Steelers and Browns, we just talked about them. Chargers are 0-2. I mean, so we'll see. I don't know who the 4th best team is in the NFC. Maybe it's Green Bay. Maybe it's Atlanta. Maybe it's the Saints. Rams. I don't know. Rams have played strong.
Yeah. Seahawks.
Maybe. Lions.
Lions, right. They're kind of all in there. I have no idea. Who knows? We're going to find out. And what's great is Cowboys, Eagles, Niners all play each other this year in the regular season. So we're going to see some of these playoff matchups in the regular season, then probably see them again in the postseason.
That is fun. That's good stuff.
Mahomes, this is basically Patrick Mahomes is really has changed the game so much, Matt, in the NFL. And it's to the point where, and I guess we've kind of seen this a little bit with Aaron Rodgers' contract. He signed a 10-year contract, right? Patrick Mahomes did originally. These are living documents now, right? They're
like the Declaration of Independence.
Exactly. It's like the 22nd Amendment now. It's so Patrick Mahomes. It's kind of convoluted what's going on. It's not a 4-year deal, but the 4-year structure has changed now for him to where he's going to get $210 million over the next 4 years through 2016 is the way I understand it. But he still has, the full 9 years or whatever it is left on his total deal, the way I see it. But it's just this one portion of it. He's going to get more now in this section. I think a lot of it has to do with obviously some other big quarterback contracts that have come and they probably knew that, all right, Patrick, you're just going to stay the highest paid and this is going to change every few years.
Yeah, I assume that's how it works too. I mean, my very not educated thoughts on it are this 4-year stretch, he's going to get the most money in NFL history over that stretch, guaranteed. I mean, no matter what. I mean, he could never play again. Now he's getting that money. And then after that stretch, they can revisit this. So he may get another signing bonus and payday. And I assume he didn't go cry to the team, I'm underpaid. I think it was just Burrow, Herbert, all these guys are getting huge contracts. We just want to honor the guy who's better than all them. But what I don't quite understand is where's the money coming from with this team? I mean, we just had this Chris Jones conversation,
And then, the other thing is this restructure is also going to continue to get restructured because they'll probably
bank of Mahomes.
They'll convert signing bonus money and, convert base salaries into signing bonus money, and he'll still have his guarantees and still get his money, but he'll get it up front when they restructure it in a signing bonus form, and then that way they can kick the can down the road. And so that it's a living document, and this might be the most restructured contract in NFL history when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of saying it, because I mentioned how Watson's contract, when they signed it, was massive, but they bumped it down to $18 million this year to make it $62 for next year, so they could pay all the guys around him, and that's not looking good. But maybe now Jones gets his deal, and they just go to the bank of Mahomes saying, "Hey, can we take a loan and pay Chris and the next guy?"
It's our mailbag episode Wednesday, Matt, on tomorrow's
Nice.
Peacock and Williamson. So I want all the listeners out there to get involved in that. I already have some early question askers in the hopper. At BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL on Twitter. You can drop a comment and a question in the YouTube comment section as well. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Big ups to all the everydayers out there that come strong for every week mailbag time. And I expect to see it again. And hey, if you haven't asked any questions before, but you are a everyday listener, drop us a question.
Yeah.
Again, at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Matt and I back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.